So I think a lot of people that think the worst thing about social media is bullying. Where that is bad, it's definitely not the only issue that parents need to be aware of.
We're going to do this. Listen to me. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
So I was obviously super impressed with the presentation that you and Deputy Gomez and Dr. Condi and Officer Hart gave at Eagle Middle School. Totally eye-opening. I knew about you guys a little bit because I had done a podcast with Gomez and then researched it's Save Our Family, correct?
Yeah. Save My Family.
Save My Family.
Yeah.
Presentation. But you guys far and away exceeded my expectations.
Thank you.
Your piece of that was specifically the commit to 16 idea that, hey, social media, everybody knows social media is bad, but they don't know how bad or like the depth of the problem. I think most people consider it as like what's going on in my family and, you know, all right, like fine, like my daughter wants to be on, you know, Snapchat or Instagram or like I have to take the phone away, but people aren't connecting the dots on how systemic the problem is, how widespread it is, and how real it is with like very significant psychological and potentially life-threatening problems as time goes on.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think a lot of people that think the worst thing about social media is bullying. Where that is bad, it's definitely not the only issue that parents need to be aware of. And so that's why we got together. Dr. Condi especially is able to tell us about what happens in the brain. So I'll briefly go over that if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So when a baby is born, their part of the brain, like the vision is the first thing that develops, you know, and their limbic system. The limbic system is the emotions. And Dr. Condi says like it's the same as a shark. We very, very similar limbic systems in all types of animals and humans. And then it slowly, the prefrontal cortex will develop. The prefrontal cortex is in charge of decision making and reasoning, you know, logic. And that doesn't fully develop until age 25. So there's this time where it's all emotion before it's like we control the emotions. And when it starts developing, like the prefrontal cortex starts developing more, is just like about puberty. And so this decision-making logic part of our brain now gets to do what's called pruning. And that, you know, you've seen pruning of a tree where you cut off branches and it makes like better fruit and bigger fruit. I think I don't really do pruning, but
right. You reduce the number of places, avenues for the resources to flow, and you refine the pathways. So it's kind of like, okay,
exactly.
Let's send more energy to this branch and let's cut this branch off completely because it's pointed the wrong direction or it's doing something that we don't like. Brain does the same thing.
Yes. And so that's basically what's going to be pruned is up to us or up to, you know, the kid whose brain is developing and what they focus on. So if they're doing piano and sports and school and all of that stuff, then those things are being developed and they're able to be well-rounded and then have this better free prefrontal cortex where they are going to be able to be functioning adults. But the problem is like social media, video gaming, that kind of thing comes in, drugs, you know, well, if that's introduced to our kids when they're developing and they can't regulate themselves, which they can't, by the way. You can't tell a 10-year-old to like, okay, play for 20 minutes and then get off. They won't regulate themselves, you know, and unless you set a timer or something to help them. But that's you being in charge, not
and then there
the
are
kid.
Consequences, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like because I run into the same problem. I have children, 3 boys as well, and
Mm-hmm.
my wife and I had this really intense conversation actually before the Save My Family presentation. We just said, look, we got to get rid of all the iPads. Mm-hmm. And iPads in our house were not a thing before we all entered like, you know, the remote learning world. And then we had to get them refurbished iPads and then they were on the iPad. So it became very normalized in our household for kids to be on screens, even though prior to that, it's like, no, you're not playing with this iPad. Like, what are you doing?
Exactly right.
But again, they turned into such monsters with them. And we really sat down together and just had a conversation around, look, they're not capable at this point or designed to be able to regulate themselves. Like, this is too attractive.
Mm-hmm.
This is not their fault. Like, we're literally hooking them up to a technological drug that is designed by people way smarter than all of us to suck them in, have the right sounds, have the right visual, have everything. And it's just like just that one more thing, no matter what.
You mentioned that they turn into monsters. And I bet all of the viewers or listeners have that same experience with their kids after too much social media or like video gaming, because this is back to the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex, where that limbic system is the emotions, right? And it is continually being stimulated by video games, or like how many likes do I have? Let me check for something else. It's constant stimulation on your emotions. And so then that overpowers your prefrontal cortex, and then there's an explosion, like the monster comes out. That's what's happening in our brains.
Right. Yeah. And again, this was not something that we had really consciously done as parents. It was just the world changed and we had to change with it. And taking a step back, it's like, they don't need them now, right? They don't need these iPads. They're getting school assigned laptops, which is another problem I hope we'll get into. But at the very least, the voluntary consumption on iPads and stuff is like, they're not better for this. They're not better children. We're not better parents. It presents all kinds of struggles and problems within our household. Mm-hmm. And we just had to get rid of them. Like, to my older boys, I just sat them down and was like, listen, this is what's going to happen. Cause our youngest was screaming and yelling. And I just got to the end. I was like, okay, it's done. And guys, like, you got to be with me on this. And they both very steadfastly agreed. They're like, okay, like, we're with you, Dad. They had video games that they liked to play, but whenever in prior months, when we would take their iPads away for punishment, they've done something. It was like, fine, you lose your iPad for a week or whatever, without fail. Like, the 8-year-old would be like, this is a lot better. Mm-hmm. Like 2 days later, I'm actually like he would come down and hang out with us more. He would have more fun. He would be more chill, and he just didn't have that anxiety, that constant, like, at a 12, like they're just the whole time. Yep. And have an 8 or 9-year-old self-reporting that they feel better when you force them to take the iPad away and then to not do it for them, right? Like, he's saying he feels better when you take the iPad away, and then you give it back to him when the punishment is over, knowing that he does not have the capability of restricting himself. It almost seemed like I was being mean to my kid.
I know. But it's so easy to fall back on that, because that's what we've been trained to do as parents. Right. That's what everybody else does too. And I don't know, it's tough. It's really hard.
Tough. Yeah. So talk to me specifically about social media, because one of the reasons I wanted to reach out to you, obviously immediately following the presentation, I was like, all right, just give it a minute. Don't be too aggressive, Matt. But something really set me off a couple weeks ago that I was like, all right, look, time is now. So my son, who's in middle school, has a school issued laptop, which is fine, and I don't actually think it's fine. I taught for almost 20 years. Like, I love direct teaching. I don't think there's a reason why we have to have math programs, for instance, as the primary education mechanism in some classrooms. Like, I'm totally good with it supplemental, but like, math teachers can get up there and just teach math. Like, I love teaching math. It totally works. Just get after it.
And they're our age. That's what they went to school to do, is the same thing. Get up and teach. And
And that's how we were educated, and it's worked just fine for a long time. But be that as it may, he had an English project that was essentially a book report. Now, back in the day when I did a book report, even with a presentation, I had to memorize the presentation. I had to write something down. I had to have like a visual thing. And you got up and you did your dumb book report on the Boxcar Children or something, like whatever it was, right? And you had to speak in front of people. Well, now they have to make a video. So instead of presenting in front of people, instead of writing something down, he had to make a video report on this book. I geek out on videos. I like video editing. Obviously, it's kind of my jam. I'm like, all right, well, this is kind of cool. So like, I squint and I kind of look past the whole, written presentation thing. But that still, I was like, all right, fine. Nothing to really throw down about. Does the whole presentation, does the whole video. He has these little jokes in it, which I think are cool. And he has like little visual things in it, which is cool. Again, he's learning a skill. Yeah. But the delivery mechanism, the submission mechanism for the actual report is the thing that set me off. So what he had to do is upload it on a portal. And the portal was essentially a file. It looked like a Dropbox file where all of the presentations were visible. So not just his presentation, not just his video book report on video, but all the other kids in the classes, right? Now, these are all shot. Some are shot in like the living room with a blurred background, but some were shot in the kids' bedrooms, right? So right away, I'm like, wait a minute, this is something that everybody was worried about over COVID. Like, why am I seeing this? I'm a random dad, right? I shouldn't have access to this girl's bedroom through this video. And so that was the first thing. I was like, oh, that's goofy. And automatically somebody commented on his video. I was like, who commented, right? Well, it was a kid, not even a kid in his classroom. Now, the comment itself was a positive comment. This girl said, hey, I will definitely read this book and check it out. But the girl's not in his English class. She's in a different class. So now all of the students, or excuse me, at least 2 class worths of students have access to these presentations. They can make comments. There were likes. There were view counts. And all of a sudden I see them like, whoa. You can start, so I started fiddling around. You could filter it between most viewed and least viewed, most comments, least comments, most likes, fewest likes. All of a sudden you start sifting through these videos and it's a full-blown, academic-based social media platform. Yeah. All of the functionings and all of the anxieties. And my son, as he absolutely is designed to do, started worrying about how many views am I getting? Has anybody else commented? Did I get likes? This is all stuff, and it's all under the guise of like, oh, this is an English project, Dad. Like, I have to be on the computer. Like, this is what's going on. So there was no way for me to be like, oh no, you can't be on Facebook worrying about how many people liked or commented or reacted. You can't be on Instagram. Here, I couldn't fight it because this was the only portal to submit the assignment.
Oh yeah. Okay. I love the idea of the video. That is fun. That's a great way. Sure.
Right.
Yes. The problem is where they get to see how many people are involved because it's middle school. They're already unsure of themselves. They need that reassurance from whatever they can get it from. If they're getting likes, okay, great. The cool kids are going to get the most likes or whatever. Well, what about those kids that don't get the most likes? That hurts. So that's a addiction of checking the likes and just seeing who's commenting on what, who's watching it. But not getting that hurts for a middle schooler,
Right. So, and just the fact that he was worried about it, right? Like there's a beautiful TED Talk that I heard back when we watched TED Talks before like podcasts were really big. There's a beautiful TED Talk that I heard that was talking about the paradox of choice. And in the absence of a choice to check your cell phone, you don't worry about it, right? And this is one of the big things. He's like, but your experience of having a cell phone in your pocket that you have to choose not to check on a regular basis. If you're at your son's basketball game or baseball game and you're choosing to not look at your cell phone, you're having a distinctly different experience than if you didn't have a cell phone in your pocket, because you have to constantly go through that process of deciding whether or not it's a good idea. It just my son knowing that there were people that were watching or not watching, were commenting or not commenting, puts a distinctly different experience into his life from an academic standpoint than other times.
Yeah, it takes it from an assignment to a social media assignment where it's more about the likes and the stuff rather than the grade that he gets from his teacher or whatever. Right. I feel like that can be harmple.
Well, I think it's really well documented that is
harmful. Yeah, exactly. Right, I've got some studies that show that.
So talk to me about this, because again, there are emerging studies all the time that go deeply into articulating like, look, this is not just an annoyance. This is not just your kids. Oh, my kid's stuck on the phone. Like, this is a real problem that can lead to people taking their lives or their lives being distinctly and meaningfully negatively impacted.
Okay. Yes. I have a list of things actually that are problems. And the first one I want to talk about is like body dysmorphia. So aside from just this assignment and stuff, but when kids get on social media, they get to see everybody's perfect. And we all know that. We've talked about it for years. That's what we see, everybody's perfect life. But that's what kids see too. And so they are seeing these fitness models who are taking pictures, whatever, but have actually like booty implants. I watched this
Right.
the other day, right? And so they think that they have to look like a certain way. You know, we had this problem in the 90s, but it wasn't on social media in our face all the time. It was
Right, we
like
had
in the
Baywatch.
checkout line. Yeah. Yeah. Or the checkout line of the grocery store. Do you see the magazines? Like,
Yeah, right.
but this is constantly in their face. And so they look at themselves and they don't see what they think they should see, and where they're perfectly normal, you know. Guys aren't big enough. They need to spend more time in the gym, eat more and more protein. You know, whatever it is for them, it's unhealthy, and then it's mentally unhealthy. Same for girls, it's a bigger issue. It leads to anorexia, bulimia, and we're seeing this all over the place. You know, that just kids are not happy with themselves because of things that they see. And it's very harmful.
And it's beyond, I mean, one of the things that was unique about, say, the magazine or like Baywatch or whatever, is it wasn't people that you were in direct contact with.
Right.
Because you had reference points where it's like, okay, I might see some jack dude on like a men's health magazine as I'm like checking out from Safeway. But then I go to school and it's like, oh, I'm surrounded by mediocrity. Because, by the way, we're all mediocre compared to that guy.
And
right?
that guy's mediocre any other time except for during that photo shoot.
Right. And like, we don't even know if that's actually him because Photoshop was obviously a thing in the 90s, more powerful now, but like, you know, these are manipulated photos, right? But the real thing is now it's not just this removed random dude on a magazine cover, nor is it a bombardment of things that are like, oh, well, these are all like my Instagram feed is filled with, say, fitness models and whatnot that I have no relation to. It's people that you can actually point to that have manipulated themselves via, you know, technology, or, you know, it's like the different poses people make. Like all of a sudden, it's people that you see on a regular basis. Filters, all of this stuff. People that you see and engage with on a regular basis that are now looking like these supermodels or superstars, where you're reminded constantly, you're like, oh my God, I suck.
Right. And let's say you're a kid and you post a picture of you that you think is really great, and you get 1,000 likes or 1,000 positive comments, but then you get 2 negative comments. What are you going to remember? The 2 negative, and they are going to hurt, and that's going to bring you down. Like it just is. Like there's no amount of positive reinforcement that's going to make up for that negative, not to them.
And why are you posting something that you think looks good and like counting the likes, right? Like that should be red flags instant. Like when my son started worrying about like whether people were liking this thing or not, I was like, oh my God, like you can't start this. This is so dark and horrible. Like you're awesome. And you know, like, fine, I think my kid's awesome. And even if like somebody else isn't thinking, like, I think he's awesome and he's going to be awesome, or he's just a normal dude. Like you don't have to have other people validating who you are in 6th, 7th, 8th grade to get on with yourself, right? Like he's in band. I went to his band concert. He's trash at the trumpet, like whatever, but like he's getting there. He's going to get there. And like everyone starts somewhere. And, you know, I played trumpet. Very much loved being a musician, and you start really bad. Yeah. Right. And you get better. Right. But
practice.
Right. But the anxiety that you can have when you are starting out detracts a lot of people. The anxiety you get when you realize you're trash prohibits a lot of people from going to the next step. And as it is with body image, it's like, you're just starting, man. Like you want to be jacked and huge someday. I'm sure you can get there, but like, you're just a kid right now.
Yeah. Don't let it consume you. Right. You know, and that's the whole thing, is we just want to avoid this part, you know, because they don't have to experience it. I love that you just said that your kid is awesome, and maybe it's just to you, but you're his parent, and parents have the most influence over their kids, the most. And so if parents will just keep doing that, like, my kid's awesome, let's get him better at this, that, you know, that's going to be something that saves our kids.
Right. And if you remove, like, if you presented parents with the options, like, okay, you can have the most important opinion of your kid and have that responsibility, or you get to punch a card and be like, no, I want my opinion of my kid to mean nothing to my kid. right? Which would you select? I think every parent in the entire world would say, no, no, no. I want my opinion of my kid to be the most important thing to my kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone hands them a cell phone. It's like you just gave that all up, because now it's literally like the faceless, countless people out in the world have a far more important position in your kid's head than you do. You just did that. You just gave the whole thing up, right? All you got to do is make sure they don't jump on the cell phone, and your opinion will still matter at least a little bit. But the second they get on social media, your opinion matters less than nothing. They'll actually not listen to you at all because you don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Right. And then it leads to that big emotional monster, and it's a tough life. That's one of the reasons that in my family, we have talked about waiting until they're 18 to have social media. They do have safe phones, so they can call me or text, and whoever I approve, they can call or text. And then there are some apps. We can talk about that later, but we decided to wait that long so that they could avoid all of this. And we want to get as many people on board as possible, but we realize that 18 is a really big ask, and you're not going to get a lot of people that wait until 18. So we have encouraged people to wait until 16. And my daughter and I started a nonprofit called Committing to 16, and it's committingto16.org. And there she explains to kids the importance of waiting until you're 16 at least to have social media. And then there are parent resources. So there are the safe phones, those safe watches and stuff, those options. There's a list, and there are discounts to them on the website. But then there's a list of resources like videos that they can watch with their kids, to start some discussions about the importance of waiting until brains are developed a little bit more to have social media.
Right. And to be clear, I think there's an idea that whatever happens from social media, it's like, okay, but this isn't, developing brains, not great, but like you take it away and it just goes away. But does the research actually pan out that if you give somebody, say, a social media platform in like early middle school, and then they have this thing all the way through like 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, all the way up to, end of high school and then in college, you take it away from them at, say, 22 or 23. Does their brain just bounce back and they're like, oh, it's no problem? Or are these meaningful and lasting damages that then this 23-year-old has to kind of like piece back together?
That is a fantastic question. And the answer is they can bounce back. But the problem is that it takes the logic and the reasoning and the stuff that was not developed in the prefrontal cortex. It takes those things to be able to police yourself to not look at social media all the time or do video games or whatever it is that the kid was doing, the now young adult. So they will need somebody who can be their police, right? A parent, somebody that can make them not look at it. And then that's tricky once they're an adult, because they're an adult and they can choose, so
Right.
So that you can retrain a brain, but it's really hard to do by yourself.
And I would have to assume it's similar to any like eating disorder or body dysmorphia. Like, you're going to be struggling to fight those urges and thoughts and impulses for years and years. Like, it's not like flip a light switch.
Right.
Because you have to learn how to engage with the world differently. You have to learn how to engage with yourself differently. You have to relearn all kinds of self-reflection and body image tricks and tactics. And like, this is like the workings of like mass psychology.
Right. And these are all addictions. They've become addictions. And just like a drug addiction, it will always be an addiction that you'll always have to fight.
I have a lot of video game addiction in my family, actually. Yeah, really bad. I was an athlete in high school and then in college as well, but I was an athlete in high school, and I I got a special award. So I got 10 varsity letters out of the 12 seasons, right? So I was on water polo, wrestling, and then swimming my freshman year, and I got my varsity letter in swimming. And then every year thereafter, I got varsity letters in all 3 of the sports. So I ended my last season with 10 varsity letters. And I was very proud of this. It's very hard to do, obviously.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a ton of familial support along the way. That's just the way I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have this award ceremony in spring. It's like May of my senior year. I'm graduating, and they're like, okay, so you get a special letter for your Letterman jacket. We had to special order it. And they got me a plaque, right, with like all the different things I did, which I was really cool. And they were like presenting it to me at the spring sports awards. And my mom actually missed that award ceremony because she was playing a role-playing game online at home.
No.
And yeah, I distinctly remember going up to her and asking, like, okay, Mom, like, we got to go now. And she's like, hey, I'm kind of in the middle of something. Would it be all right if I don't go? And of course, as an 18-year-old, you're not going to like beg your mom to come to an award ceremony. So I was like, yeah, fine.
But that hits hard still.
Yeah. And I don't think my mom would do it the same way now, but the risks of multiplayer, hypersocial, video games and for instance, social media things, they weren't well understood.
No.
The video game addiction itself wasn't well understood because the quality was so low, right? Like to get addicted to Mike Tyson Punch-Out is pretty hard. To get addicted to current video games, super easy because the quality is so high, right? Like the research going into them for the addiction purposes is so high. And so, talking to things about this, it's like, it's really, really difficult to help people understand how much damage these things can do, even from that. And I'm not saying, like I want to go out and commit suicide because of this. It's obviously something that stuck with me, but it's always a stark reminder of like, I want to educate my kids so they don't make those decisions. And so I don't fall into those things too.
Right. And anybody can fall into them.
Right.
That's why we need to prevent it.
Right.
Just like an alcohol or drug addiction.
Right.
It's if you don't ever start, then it is not a problem,
Right. Right. And the damage that can be done. I kind of flirted with the video game addiction thing too. I flunked out easily flunked out a semester of, I didn't flunk all of my classes, but like half my classes, there's a semester of college, and those grades stuck with me, and I ended it very successfully in college, but it took coming to like a halt at the end of one of the semesters, like, oh God, you can never play this again. Like this, you feel like this is replacing a success hierarchy in life. And in reality, this doesn't even exist. This is a nothing. Yeah. You're like, you have this inclination towards success and towards bettering yourself, but you're getting your kicks for it on this video game, which is not real life.
Right.
But that's like a really tough thing to realize for somebody who's really into it.
It is. And especially if they're really young too. Like, let's say you have a 14-year-old who is really into video games, but they also go to school. So they're playing their video games from when school is out until 2 a.m. and then going to sleep at 3 because it takes a while to go to sleep.
Oh yeah.
Waking up at 6 to go to school. So sleep is so important, and they're getting like 3 hours of sleep per night. So not only is their brain like just pruning toward the video games, but also it's not able to function because of the lack of the sleep.
Right. Right.
It's
dark stuff.
Dark stuff.
Yeah. Okay. And let's get back to your list. So the first one is the rampant and nonstop comparison, not just with things in the world of magazines, but every time you pick up your phone and in real life, because now you can actually point to people that are using filters and other modifications to make themselves look superior. Yeah. And then they walk around as if that's their actual person.
Exactly.
Right.
But then that takes us into like pornography, right? And I think that we're desensitized because of looking at everybody's pictures of their bodies,
Oh my God, leg day, butt day. It's just so disgusting.
And but it's like you see it and you don't even think anything anymore because you've seen it 1,000 times or more, Right. So then it's easier for kids to send a picture of, their just, okay, let's say a guy sends a picture with his shirt off to somebody, and that's fine. That's not pornography. But then they're going to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And suddenly he's sending a picture and getting pictures from girls, whatever. Right. Well, I just read the code of the law, and the first offense for kids distributing pornography, even of themselves, right? Just right. those naked pictures, is a misdemeanor. But the second is a felony. Like, parents need to know about what is the law as well, so they can talk to their kids about it. So they can prevent the actual sending of pictures.
Right. Yeah. And the resending, the sharing, right?
Sharing too, yeah.
That seems to be the biggest thing that people don't realize. Like, say I was some, poorly behaving 16-year-old and I send a nude of myself to some girl, she sends me a nude back. If I then distribute that and I'm like, oh my God, look at Jenny, like even if I show my friend without physically sending it to him, that's a felony as well, right? Because now I'm distributing child pornography.
Yeah, it's either a misdemeanor or a felony, and there's verbiage in the law, and
understood.
And we can post that. But
gotcha.
Yes,
yeah, and again, that's one of the number one ways that these things get out of control, right? Like, somebody sends a picture, they trusted the person they sent it to, inaccurately,
Sure.
But you trust this person, you send it to them, and all of a sudden it gets shared on like a group chat, and then all of a sudden it's getting blasted all around.
Yeah. And I mean, and then people screenshot it and text it, whatever, to somebody else. And yeah, it's just bad. It's
bad. So desensitized through social media to then think it's okay to start sending stuff around.
Yeah. That also, I mean, it makes us objectify each other. Like, we are made for human interaction, for love, and when we are objects and we make each other objects, then we don't have that love, and it doesn't matter at all. Like, you wouldn't matter to me if you were just an object. I could go get another one. And that's how kids are often being raised to feel about each other. It's like an object.
Right.
So...
God, man, it's so dark. And that's, I mean, you obviously see this play out recently in the local politics in Eagle, right? With the campaigns that were going on, the things people were saying online because they were communicating with a computer screen.
Yes.
Right. Like, you see people saying things on Facebook and whatnot, or next door. It's like, you have objectified this person just because the means of communication dehumanizes them, right? Like, they're just a screen name, or they're just it's a fake profile anyway. Yes. You don't even know who the person is. So you're like, okay, because you have some ridiculous, fake profile, I'm actually going to say whatever I want to you, because you're not even remotely a person, right? You don't even have a real name of like somebody I could run into at the grocery store, even though they absolutely could be somebody you're running into. You just don't know it. Right. And they it was so crazy watching that.
Oh, I know. That's awful. And I mean, the other day I was looking at a cake recipe on Instagram, and you should read the comments on that. Like, so mean about a cake recipe. It's like, what? And, like, would you ever say that, to anybody?
Your cake is trash.
Right? Like,
it's
what?
Trash. If your grandma made this, she was trash.
I know. But I mean, it
your
allows
kid
us to do that.
Probably deserves this cake.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. A cake recipe.
Yeah, it's bonkers. And you have anywhere, I was speaking with Deputy Gomez about, I never know whether to call him deputy or officer.
He's both.
Because he's both, right?
Yeah.
It's like Gomez. I'll just say Gomez.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Speaking with Gomez about all the different areas where you can find the comments or, people uploading pictures of themselves, and obviously predators hang out there. So he was talking specifically about, he was like, there was a girl that had a Fitbit, and the Fitbit allowed you to upload, like stories about like, oh, I saved or I lost weight and all this stuff. And then people are like, oh, well, like, upload pictures and like, let's see your improvement. And then you have a pedophile like hanging out trying to get 16-year-old girls or like 14-year-old girls to upload, nudes. It's like, God, man, what a dark.
It's so dark. And then can they see where they're located on that too?
Right.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Okay. Yeah. What's the next one?
Okay.
So you have people desensitized. They start feeling comfortable sending out nudes. One thing that Gomez did say also when I spoke with him recently is that young women in particular are very susceptible to following the lead from their parents because they see their mom sending out like leg day or butt shots or all these different things. They see those social media things. They're like, well, fuck it.
If mom's doing it.
Yeah, if mom's doing it, like we all know that dress was kind of real. I'm going to do the same thing.
Exactly. And like we talked about before, parents are the most influential people in their kids' lives.
Right.
So if they're doing it, it's okay.
Right. Okay, what's the next one?
Next thing. Okay, on social media, do parents know that kids can get drugs so easily? Like, it's a drug dealer. Snapchat, you get on, you talk to your drug dealer, and 20 minutes later, he's at the high school delivering whatever you ordered.
God, that's so crazy.
So crazy. But the scary thing about that, not just the drugs, but is that they're usually like street drugs, which come from, like, let's say fentanyl. It comes from China to Mexico. And then in Mexico, the cartels will press it in totally unsanitary conditions. So what I mean by that is, let's say they're making some street Adderall. Okay, well, it's Adderall, press it, send it out. Then they do fentanyl. Okay, they press it, send it out. Well, then they do Adderall again, but they haven't cleaned the fentanyl. And then they send out some more Adderall. So you can get like some kind of purification of Adderall, and then you get Adderall with fentanyl. But these kids who have never had opiates, they start dying because their bodies aren't used to it. They stop breathing, and you need to breathe to live.
I was just speaking with Representative Hill about this. He was saying there was something like over 100,000 people that died from fentanyl last year, which is wild. It's bad. It's really bad. And to your point, we were talking about the accidental exposure to fentanyl in, like, you're using the example of Adderall. Fine. Yeah, like, we don't want kids buying Adderall, especially like street Adderall. But you have kids that are like, look, I really legit need to study for a test, not justifying Adderall, but they're like, I'm going to get some Adderall and study for this test, or Adderall for whatever. And they just die totally as an accidental dose. They're not, there's some sentiment in the community, and I don't necessarily agree with this, right? There's sentiment in the community that it's like, look, drug addicts dying, well, they kind of did it to themselves. And again, that's a really harsh thing to say, but to some degree, it's like, okay, I see the argument you're making, but you don't have to be intending to do drugs like that to die from things like fentanyl.
Right. You can be wanting to study for a test. You could be as a straight A student on the football team or volleyball team, whatever, and you just wanted to study for this test. You had a friend who gets stuff from this guy on Snapchat, and he brought you something, and you don't wake up. Right. It's not bad kids that are doing this. I don't even think there are bad kids necessarily. It's just what they're taught.
Man, that's really rough. And Snapchat's the worst, correct?
I get most of my info from Officer Gomez on that, and he talks a lot about Snapchat. Yeah. I mean, TikTok's bad, but to get the drugs, I think it's very big with Snapchat.
Right, because Snapchat is actually not just encrypted on end to end. They actually erase the data, right? So like, you can, if Gomez goes to Snapchat and they're like, all right, give me, what message was sent, the disappearing message. They're like,
they can.
No, we actually didn't save it at all.
Right.
So it makes it very, very hard for them to find the people or find what was said. So even if they can locate the perpetrator, they can't, they lack, sometimes they lack sufficient evidence to actually incarcerate them, because Snapchat has deleted all the conversation. The teen or tween might say, hey, this is what happened, this is what was said, this is what I sent, but in the absence of the actual evidence, it's impossible for them to actually charge them.
Right.
It's dark. Okay, next one.
Dark. All right. Well, vaping. That's a huge one, and I think a lot of kids and a lot of parents don't think it's a big deal. But vaping is not just your cigarette anymore. They can have THC. They can have incredible amounts of nicotine, so much more than cigarettes, that you'd be blown away. And I think cigarettes are no longer cool. So, kids aren't necessarily trying cigarettes as much, which is what we parents are like, oh, good, they're not, doing cigarettes, because we were taught that was bad, no smoking. Right. But vapes are worse as far as addiction. There are kids that can't go through one class without having their vape hidden in their shirt and taking a hit. And, teachers don't necessarily know, because they can either smell good or not smell at all. And, as more than just the addiction thing, we're seeing a lot of lung problems. Shocking. I know. But that wasn't in the studies before because it's just not old enough to be there. But now we're seeing that. So, man, talk about vaping with your kids. You know, it's a big deal. Lots of people do it, and lots of people think it's okay.
Right. And there are smoke shops everywhere.
Everywhere.
Like everybody loves it's the delivery mechanism, right? Like it's so easy. You have one little thing, and it could be totally innocuous. It could be just like, oh, it's caffeine, right? Like, or it's strawberry flavor. I just like it. Like chewing gum. Like it just tastes like strawberry.
Yeah.
But you normalize this person just and blowing something out, and you're like, okay, well, it could just be caffeine. It could just be a strawberry flavor. It could be like a nothing.
Yeah.
It could also be THC. It could also be like nicotine, the likes of which you've never seen in an organic plant, right? Like it's way, way more dangerous because nobody's like your warning bells don't go off because we've normalized the delivery mechanism.
Exactly. And then if you start with just strawberry flavor or just caffeine, well, there's always a next. Well, I'll try a little bit of nicotine, you know, until it's a lot of nicotine and then THC and then whatever else is in it, you know. It starts small and it always grows unless it can be stopped, you know.
That's so rough. Yeah, the vaping is a bad one. Juul, is that Juul? Juuls was like a vaping company, right?
I think so.
And they were the original lung damage, like lawsuits, right? Because like somebody,
I don't know, probably.
Oh yeah, there was a whole thing a few years back that people were getting some like bad oil or something in the Juul.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like legit, somebody like died in 24 hours or something because his lungs just totally failed to work.
Yeah, yeah. So there is that acute thing, but then there is the chronic problem too, where you're going to see, I think we're going to see lung cancers and things like that.
God, that's dark.
Yeah. But preventable.
Preventable. Is vaping normalized on social media to some degree?
Oh,
or is
it's normalized. Yes, absolutely. Everywhere. And you can get your vapes through social media. You know, it's kids, you have to be a certain age to get them, I think. And
sure.
So
legally. anything where there's a barrier, they can find an alternate on social media.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So see how it's not just like a social media checking all the time, but it's like deeper like this.
Dark.
Yeah.
And a lot of the social media that parents interact with is not the social media that teens are interacting with. That's one of the big things. So, we all know what we know, right? So it's like anything else. If I categorize social media as Facebook and I'm like, oh, kids on Facebook, it's like, no. Social media is a broad term that talks about a lot of different platforms, some of which are less predatory and others are extremely predatory.
Right.
And, like when I was teaching SAT prep, my students were like, oh, you should get Snapchat. I didn't know anything about what I know about it now. I'm like, I'm not getting Snapchat. And they're like, oh, no, it's cool. Like, you should check it out. So I finally did get Snapchat.
Yeah, me too.
And all of a sudden I'm like, wait, this is where everyone is? They're like, yeah. Like, why do you know that? Like, I don't want anyone knowing where I am. And again, I instantly got rid of it. But it's like, it's horrifying to see that. And then people were just snapping all the time. Like, you could always tell when somebody was snapping because they like take a picture of their SAT book and then write something and then send it off. They're like, you just sent a snap, didn't you? They're like, yeah. But it's like, that's how they sent messages.
Right. And they had to have a streak and keep up their streak, which is also an added stress because, oh, no, I have to do that.
Yeah, Gomez was telling me that he arrested a girl for very serious charges, and her request he was like, "Do you want me to call your mom?" And she's like, "Can you get on my Snap and like send a picture because I got to keep my streak up." Like, you're going to jail, and you're asking.
Oh my
like,
gosh, it's so sad.
It was pretty bad. Yeah. All right, what's the next one?
All right. Okay, so Dr. Condi talks about something that's happening a lot right now, but anyway, it is seizures. So TikTok seizures. So what's happening is that a lot of kids, especially teenage girls, are starting to have seizures that have nothing to do with neurology. They're all psychological. And what happens in the past, if somebody has a history of trauma, abuse, sexual abuse, they often will have these seizures that are psychological seizures, and they'll start seizing like it is a neurological problem, right? But now they're seeing this happening in girls who have no history of trauma like that, but they all are on social media, and it is a big deal in their lives. So they will just start seizing, and they can't control it. It's not something to do to get attention, but that is their new problem. And it's not something that a neurologist can help them with, but maybe a psychologist. And go ahead.
Okay. So I've heard things like this before.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially what you're saying is there is a history of seeing young women who have been, abused in some capacity to have a psychological based seizure and not like a neurological, like neurons are misfiring and you have to go see like a
not
neuroscientist.
Epilepsy or anything.
Right. So it's a seizure that the body implements as a coping mechanism or a result to extreme abuse. Okay. And now the abuse mechanism, right, is actual social media, things like TikTok that traumatize the brain in a similar manner.
Exactly.
And the brain then responds in the same way it would respond to extreme, like sexual abuse or something like that. So now girls on TikTok are having seizures that are exactly the same types of seizures they would have if they were being abused in some other way.
Exactly. And something very similar is called TikTok Tourette's. And so you can.
I saw a little bit of this. It's so dark.
It is. It's like, what? But so Tourette's, that is a syndrome that usually happens to boys, and it starts maybe around like 7. Usually it kind of dissipates around puberty, right? So that is the normal age range. This is also now happening to teenage girls, like older teenage, 16, maybe 15. And they are starting to have tics like Tourette's, where they're just be sitting there and it happens all day long. And what is happening is the same thing. It's a psychological thing. So they've seen other people on TikTok who have this TikTok Tourette's, and they will start doing it themselves, but not consciously. And so now they have this new disorder, and it's incredibly embarrassing for them. And they have these tics now where they didn't before, and they don't actually have Tourette's. It's also not a neurological problem. It's a psychological problem. And so then the way to get past that is probably to get off of social media and get a psychologist.
And again, the emphasis here is it's literally not something they're doing to get attention, though the reason they've come upon it is because people do give them attention. Like if you work with, there's a gal on I'm sure there are hundreds and thousands of them, but there's one that's dropped into my feed recently that I saw, which is, again, I noticed this. She'll do like cameos, right? Where, somebody they're like, hey, can you do a Tourette's video where like you're congratulating my friend on graduating high school? And she'd be like, your balls, congratulations on fucking, they're like,
yeah.
And I was like, what in the am I looking at? Right. And because perhaps she didn't start doing it to get attention, but social media upregulates those videos. So then other people are exposed to this behavior. So even if they're like, okay, I would never do that, it's never something I want to do, their brain doesn't know. And their brain's like, no, this is what you're going to start doing.
Yep.
So the people that end up doing it in the end, as you pointed out, it's like, it's embarrassing. They're not intending to do it, but because it became popularized and they consumed this content, it's something that their brain took on as a behavior.
Yes. And they are posting their own online and seeing how many likes they get and comments like, oh girl, I'm so sorry. This the empathy and sympathy from people. It's just this attention that they must crave, where subconsciously that's making them have these tics.
And they can't just turn it off. That's the thing. Like, it takes on a life of its own in their head.
Right. It's like quitting social media. You have to have somebody there to help you stop.
Gosh. Okay. I'm going to have Condi on because he went.
You do.
Hearing some of the things he's talked about too with relation to this is just, it's a lot. Let's keep going. This is great. I mean, it's as great as something as dark as this can
Right.
be. Yeah, right.
That's kind of the main stuff I have on social media. There are other things we could talk about, I'm sure. Do you have another like topic that you want to talk about? Because then we can get into what to do.
Let's talk about what to do, because
Okay.
I think there are a lot of different things, but we've covered a lot already, and I don't want to bombard people with too much information. But the bottom line is there is this problem, and if you don't believe there's a problem yet after hearing what you've heard, that's on you, right?
Right.
That, like, it is what it is, right? This is ever increasingly documented. The damage that's being done it's almost like it's exponentially growing. Like 5 years ago, I had never heard about anybody developing Tourette's or epilepsy or epileptic seizures seemingly from social media. But now this is like a thing that's, worked its way into the literature. It's like, no, this is the thing. So what's going to be the problem tomorrow? I have no idea.
Right.
But like, I guarantee you, we're not done discovering problems from social media. Yeah. So for the people that do believe, let's talk about what needs to be done. For the people that don't believe, I'm sure you will be back. So we can keep going. So
I know. Come on, you guys.
What do you do?
Okay. The first thing, this sounds so simple, but as we've mentioned a couple of times, parents have the biggest influence on their kids. So, family dinners. Okay. We can't always be with our kids all the time. They have school, we have work, whatever.
Sure.
We can work in some sort of family dinner or ice cream or something to have time with them where it is not like just a one-on-one interview, but it's time where we can just discuss our days, discuss the problems that we're facing with social media or with politics or whatever, just anything. And, kids' anxiety levels go down. Like they're inversely proportionate to the amount of dinners let me say that again. Okay. There is an inverse relationship with anxiety and the amount of dinners that people have as a family.
So as the number of dinners go down, the amount of anxiety reported goes up.
Yes. So, and that means anxiety will go down the more dinners we have together as families. They're surrounded by people that love them more than just as a poster on social media, right? That care about what happens in their lives. And, you're subsequently eating healthy, ideally. Sorry.
Well, you're eating something. That's
something.
Not like fast food.
Yeah. And even if it is, you're at least together.
At least together.
You're at least together.
I'm going to get In-N-Out.
Yeah. You're going to wait for like 6 hours.
I did. You know what? I didn't wait for 6 hours, but I did wait in like 28-degree temperature outside and I braved the freezing cold. And then I spent, it was like $60. Like it was the most expensive In-N-Out ever, but I essentially doubled our order. Like instead of getting one double, I got two for myself and two for my wife.
Yeah,
and
you can freeze that stuff and heat it up tomorrow.
No, it was gone.
Oh,
like
really?
I bought 10 burgers.
Nice.
I know it's terrible, but I was like, I can't help it. Like I gotta go hard. It was like Saturday.
And
like,
that's a nostalgia thing. Like it's an experience.
It was so worth it too. Every bite was a blessing.
Right.
Oh my gosh. And the fries were great. That's the only thing I didn't go double down on, but I did get myself an animal fry to eat on the way home because I wasn't expecting everybody else to come with me. So I just went. It was like a 3-hour endeavor. It was worth every second.
Good.
I didn't care at all.
I'm so glad.
Oh, and I had the pepperoncinis while I was waiting. Oh, so good. Anyway.
Good.
Yeah. So
I'm
again, time together.
Time together. Yes. Their anxiety will go down the more that you have dinners together. Just time together, really.
This seems to be one of those things that, like, it to be true if you look at any person that that really is like struggling. There was a family I worked with in California that had a lot of money. I mean, like, lots of money, probably easily in the hundreds of millions. Oh. And parents were divorced. So right away you have a separation. Both parents were engaged with their professional pursuits. So right away you don't have somebody like home when you get home. And I think they were doing the best they could, but they would just throw money at their kids. So one of their kids had, and the allowances were upwards in the thousands per month. And, obviously led to drug problems, led to all of the horrible things you could think of with social media happened to one of their kids. And it was horrifying to hear about. I was working with the older siblings, and they were saying like, yeah, my younger sister's like going through these things. And then I ended up working with the younger sister as well. She was a wonderful, wonderful young girl, but like you could tell she was like barely keeping her shit together. And even in the presence of these real bad things, it's like, again, was the time there every day? Was the sitting down for dinner every day there? Was the like all of this like real meaningful engagement there every day? It wasn't. And it seems so just black and white when you're like, yeah, just be with your kid. Be with your kid. As boring as that may be for your kid, as painful as it may be, like even for you, because you're like bothered with your kid and you have these other like really entertaining and awesome, business things that you want to be doing. It's like, that's the number one thing that's going to help your kid.
It is. It is. Do a puzzle with them. Something like.
God, I hate puzzles. I hate them.
Yeah, I just started one. It's pretty intense.
They're so terrible. It's such just a ridiculous pursuit. Like build Legos with them or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
Legos.
like,
go for a walk. Whatever.
Yeah, right.
But like, I mean, we could put this all into family dinners, right? Just time together. Time together is the biggest thing, and because if you're not their influence, something else will be.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Another thing is go outside. So like studies show that being in the sun, getting vitamin D, getting exercise, just being outside are going to increase happiness and lower anxiety, lower depression. Also, I do clinicals for nurse practitioner school, and man, everybody needs to be exercising. It's going to save our liver and our kidneys and our hearts, So not just this mental health issue, but this physical health issue. We're nipping it all in the bud,
Right.
Let's see.
So families, outside time.
Outside time. Yeah. Just spending time outside. One thing that we do as a family, and it's so much fun, is we pick a team. And so our team is the Green Bay Packers. And we watch all of their games. We make brats and pretzel bread, and we wear our swag and just have this time together as our family, like cheering for the Green Bay. And this year, it's not been like the best year for them, but still fun to cheer with my family. And we can talk about things like how much time and dedication it takes to be a professional football player, and stuff like that. Or we can talk about nothing at all, just how good the brat is. It doesn't really matter, but we're time together, and then we have this camaraderie.
Yeah,
it's super fun.
I struggle with professional sports.
You could do college, high school.
I struggle. Okay, I could go high school just because I probably know the kids, or but I can't like the college and professional world. It's like I don't hero worship. No, it's not even that. It's like I'm on my own mission. Like I'm on my own journey, and like I'm trying to make myself great. And like, yeah, you happen to be experiencing this person in a snapshot in their journey with like this hyper specialized skill. And it's like, yeah, awesome. Like, good for you. Great. I don't.
Well, I will be honest and say I don't really know any players. I'm not great at football, but it's just fun with our family.
Man, okay, Zach Ertz, who was on the Eagles for some time.
Okay.
And I can't remember who he got traded for. I worked with him and his whole family. He he was the oldest of 4 boys. He goes to I help him get into Stanford, and then he gets picked up and plays in the NFL, and I believe is still playing. And it's like, he was home for a brief period of time. Like he got a game-winning touchdown at the Super Bowl, a few years back. And he's a legit world-class pro athlete. And I just couldn't care at all. Like I can't be like, I know, like when we hung out, when he was in town, I went over to his house and we had like Monopoly, tournament.
Yeah.
Like he's a person. He's a person. And Zach has his own journey that he's on. And I think that's beautiful and awesome. And his wife is a world-class athlete too. And she has her own journey and it's awesome. I can't be bothered. I'm like, Zach is not watching me.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same way, honestly. People don't really impress me.
And not to take anything away from what you're saying. Like, I think it is great that you engage meaningfully, even in an unimportant pursuit of cheering for Green Bay. Like, it's not going to change anyone's life, but it's a thing you do together.
Yeah.
It just so bothers me. I don't care about these people.
Well, Eagle High had a really good season in
Go
football.
Go Eagle High.
Yeah, we were at every game.
There you go. They need to stream those. Do they stream them?
I think they do. Yeah.
I could get behind that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It'd be good. It'd be good.
Yeah.
Is that the last one?
Let's see. No, we have prioritizing sleep. We've talked about just how good that is for a brain, and exercising, endorphins.
Everybody likes a good runner's high.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's the best.
Seriously, it is. Yes. Service. This is a huge one. So there's a study that I was reading, and it talked about people who serve every week, once a week at least, they have a happiness increase equal to somebody who the difference between makes $25,000 and $75,000 in income, So that's a big difference, and I'm sure a lot of stress difference. So if somebody's just serving to get that amount of difference in their lives, that's a big deal.
That's actually one of the greatest increases in income. So like 0 to 25, like if you're making 0, you're probably like a high school person.
Yeah.
And then 25 is like, okay, you're making about $2,000 a month, and you're probably like close to minimum wage. Yeah, grad student doing something, right? Mm-hmm. And then up to 75, that's actually a very unique number, because beyond 75, the increase in happiness, it diminishes down to almost nothing. Like if you go 75 to 200,000, your actual happiness, yeah, you can do more things, but they don't actually derive more happiness for you. Like, yeah, like you went to Disneyland, okay, or you went and did whatever, but like people making less money than you are doing things that bring them an analogous level of happiness. So like the 25 where you're barely surviving, up to 75 and you have like your needs met and whatever, like that's the most meaningful jump in happiness that we can experience from an income level.
Yeah, exactly.
That's wild.
So just add on service.
You don't even need to jump up to 75.
Yeah, that's a lot of happiness.
Be happy, living like a grad student.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's not bad. I'm a grad student.
I mean, it's not. It's okay. It's fine.
Right. I'm a 43-year-old grad student.
Grad school is not for me. I mean, at least let me put it this way: grad student at 23 was not for me.
Yeah,
I'd go back to school now, but like
it's
I'm an
so
adult
much
now.
easier now. I'll be honest. Like I care so much less about having a social life. There's all this time to study.
I got nothing but
yeah.
Yeah. Right.
This is so fun. Okay. Screen time limits. So we're not really saying never be on a screen, never play video games, right?
Sure.
That's not it. But there is a limit, and the American Academy of Pediatrics says less than 2 hours, but every kid is different. So your kid, if 30 minutes is going to be harmful to them, and I'll explain that later, but stop at 25 minutes. So how do you know if something is harmful to your kid? Well, if you can tell them, all right, time to shut it off. And they're like, oh, okay. And shut it. Good. You're golden. But if they throw a fit because that was not enough time, or they want to finish something, that's when you know that they've hit that
threshold where they can't control themselves.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And Dr. Condi will call it an amygdala hijack.
I remember him saying that.
Yeah.
Hijack the amygdala.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just, your kid. And so do what's best for them. And if you don't know right now, figure it out, right? Now that you've heard this stuff, figure out if 30 minutes is okay or 2 hours.
Figure it out.
But yeah. But I mean, if 2 hours is still a lot of time to be on a video game where they could be learning a new skill, or, increasing a different skill, learning how to read better, etc., whatever.
Right. And we have a rich history of like the couch potato. So it's not that, like we grew up watching TV and doing absolutely nothing, not engaging, skill sets, not, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not that all screen time is terrible, right? But again, within limits, and you want to engage other things. And yeah, there's plenty of time for downtime. Like there's plenty of room for like, we have Friday night movie night. So like we have family movie every Friday night.
Yeah.
Like eat dinner and popcorn and the whole thing.
Yes.
Pick a trash movie. God, the kids' movies these days are terrible. Like there's just, I mean, they don't hit like Land Before Time.
Oh,
you know?
I know. That was a good one. We just watched Indiana Jones, the new one, last night. It was fun.
Was it a good one? Because the Crystal Skull one was pretty much
It
the
was much
worst.
better than the Crystal Skull. I thought it was good, but also I kind of get bored with action, and there was so much action that I was like, I got on my phone. I know. Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
just
so
for 10
I
minutes or
assume you're
so.
not a big fan of the John Wick series.
I haven't even seen it, but my husband loves
It's
it.
literally like a kickboxing, jujitsu, gunfight the entire time.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty fantastic.
Probably why he hasn't invited me to watch it with him. 'Cause he
Probably.
knows
Well,
me.
you got to know your partner.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Nurse Kelli, listen, I just checked the time. We got to get you out of here because I know you got other things going on. Thank you for making the time today. I really appreciate it. I would love to have you back in the future. Let's keep the conversation going.
Sounds great.
Again, there are new things coming out all the time about why people should be hesitant to let their children just have free reign on social media. And I mean, I'm going to publish an episode today with Gomez about sextortion and the number of teen boys that are taking their lives, and then the teen girls that end up getting sex trafficked because they started sending around photos of themselves, all because of Snapchat. It's such a painful thing to talk about.
But it's going to be a good episode. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's a good one. So thank you for what you're doing. And again, your program is committo16.org.
Committing to 16.
Committing.
To 16.org. And there will just be a lot of resources for parents. So
well, that's what they
get
need.
on there. Yeah.
And hopefully we can get the word out and get people starting to take advantage of the resources a little bit more.
Yes.
This podcast is brought to you by MTU Studios. If you're looking to start a podcast or need content for your business or personal use, content of any type, please reach out to MTU Studios. MTUstudios.com. We'd love to help.